Hi, everybody. So this is like rare. We're before schedule, than rather. Yeah. So I guess there's something different about today. Maybe we're feeling like we got more time on our hands. That's nice. I usually feel like I'm running behind. It is Sunday, huh? So it's a time of little rest and relaxation, and I kind of feel like that about my talk today too. I kind of approach most of my talks this way, hoping to just let it flow, because that's where the best stuff comes out. When you just let it flow, and you'll hear me say that quite a few times, especially in reference to painting and my attitude about making art and life in general. It usually works out best if you're flexible and you're going with the flow. So I'm really excited that I get to be here. This is I'd say from all the different gatherings and festivals I've been to, this is really, it just feels like a good place to make family and like nurture family and talk about really important issues and things that we feel is, really pressing, important, timely, and empower each other. I mean, I feel like a lot of the things I've been hearing from people just in talks, and we're definitely acknowledging issues, but more than anything, this is an empowerment gathering. It's kind of like, we get to pat each other on the back and smile and hug and dance and do all that kind of stuff. So, and that's pretty much what I've been trying to do in the most part in my life and in my journeys and in my work. And it's taken definitely a bit of a journey to get there, to kind of feel like, yeah, I have something that I really want to say, and I have something that I am feeling, and I want to share it, because I feel like this sharing experience is something that gives each of us more of a little something, a little medicine, whatever it is, a little nudge to open ourselves up more to experiences. Because if we're aware in our daily lives, there's gifts everywhere. And there are saints and angels and all kinds of things. And you can navigate, when you start to navigate your life more based on a sense of the flow and of being, well, what is my greater mission and how can I best serve? Then others will also, you kind of like pave the way, like kind of like a light way for others to also come with. And I've been teaching now for the last few years, painting, and that's been a whole new experience in sharing all the gifts and tools and things that I've been given. And it's incredible, because you get to really step up to, you've heard so much and you've understood it, but then how do you communicate that back out? And if you're going to be telling others something, you really have to embody that, and you have to walk that talk. And the thing is it's not as beautiful as all my many of my paintings are. They express a real beautiful, aspiring state, I feel like, and that's something that I long for, and that I feel like in that is happening, that we're going towards. So it's something that's kind of mirroring a vision that I see for the future, in a sense, and for ourselves. But at the same time, there's the reality of what such a large percentage of the rest of the world sees and is projecting, that we also have to work in. And that is, I'm sure you all agree with me, it can be a little bit of an interesting dance, and finding that balance between how do we really work in this world without upsetting too many people in one direction, or, I mean, I don't feel like I upset many people probably, but definitely there's a challenging aspect, and allowing others to have their space to also grow and learn what they need to learn. you can just give little pointers here and there and be an example. And I feel like as we gather in places like this, we affirm each other, yeah, you're on a good track. Yeah, you're not alone. We're family. And we go back out into the world and take a little bit of that with us, and then we go recharge again. And yeah, that's kind of like the path. And so I'm blessed to be here, because this just affirms more my path, to see all your faces and be in this space. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about my path, and also my true vision. I feel like that has been really growing and crystallizing this year, and that I'm really, really genuinely excited about. And that's, I think, why I'm getting up and wanting to talk, because I'm talking so much anyway. So why not talk to more people at once, right? And the thing is I'm not just talking with words, I'm also talking with my paintbrush, and so I'm painting out live in different settings, and really enjoying it a lot. So I'll give you a little bit of background on me. I don't know how many of you know my work already, or some of my background, but my name is Amanda Sage, and I was born in Denver, Colorado, and I was given a really beautiful childhood, like a lot of the children running around here. I wasn't in so many community festival settings, but my mother and father raised my brothers and I very wholesome, and without media, and without refined sugar for years and all that kind of stuff, and went to a Waldorf school. And I was given the gift of a lot of really wonderful adults in my life too, teachers and people that were just very nurturing and inspiring, and offered a lot of examples of possibilities. So my spectrum of what was possible in the world was pretty large. And my father was an airline pilot, so I got to travel a lot. Straight out of high school, I took off and went to Bali, Indonesia, and lived there for a year and a half, working with this incredible midwife, Robin Lim. And I illustrated an herbal book for traditional Balinese herbs based on childbirth, and it was an incredible experience. And I went on and did a lot of batik there, and had my own little clothing line. And I was always self-sustainable. Even in school, I kind of wanted to be independent, and didn't. And when I realized, actually, for making Christmas presents one year when I was 14, painting on T-shirts, there was somebody that saw a shirt that I had painted for someone and was like, wow, that's so cool, could I buy one? And I was like, whoa. That changed everything for me. There was a little light bulb that went off, and I was like, wow, I can make money like this. And so I've done that ever since, and had this really magical journey in apprenticing. I went to Vienna, Austria to work with this artist, Michael Fuchs, who taught me the techniques of the old masters, and learning the Mish technique. And I got to also spend an incredible time in this place called the Vuk. I had a studio there for many years. It's an old locomotive factory in downtown Vienna. And I shared a studio there for about 10 years with a friend of mine from Chile. And we had all kinds of gatherings there, and we were the studio, Grand Central Station studio, is what it kind of felt like. We had a rule, though. Anybody could come. You could come once and just hang out, but if you wanted to come again, you had to bring a sketchbook, or you had to do something, because this was an active space. And it was a really great place for me to learn about community, and also nonprofit organizations, and really interesting experiments in social settings and culture, and how do we run such a diverse and interesting kind of an experiment as a physical location, like a culture center is what this place is, and make it free, as well as you need a certain amount of structure too. So what do those structures look like? So it's a real experiment in autonomous groups, and how do we make decisions with each other, and incredible. It was an amazing experience, and I'm still very involved with this place. There's the courtyard too. It's 12,000 square meters of alternative culture, and this really woke me up also to realizing that there's things like this all over the world. Because I had some dreams and ideas about this with a group of friends around 18, 19, and we had this dream, this thing we call it the Twilight Project. And we wanted to see these culture centers and these little nodes pop up all over the world. And they all be connected, though. So they all be different, but they'd all be connected in the sense that they were trying to create this global web of globalizing through culture and through spirit and through, the essence, the fire at the hearth in the middle. And so this is interwoven in my life constantly, these visions, these ideas, and is what brings me to settings like this. How do we globalize in a way where we're acknowledging each other, and also creating a world together. So I'll weave that back in, I'm sure, plenty of times now. So I went on to work with this artist, the father of my teacher. His name is Ernst Fuchs, and he's this incredible painter. He's 82 now. And he's kind of like in the lineage of surrealism and founded the School of Fantastic Realism with Hundertwasser and Hausner and Brauer, this whole school of artists that came out of Vienna in the 50s. And I ended up becoming his apprentice, and I did things like this. This is a random photo. Oh, I'm behind here. Sorry. So this is his villa. In Vienna. This is Otto Wagner villa, and he's very extravagant, kind of like in the lineage of Dali, and has 17 children. Dali didn't have any, right? But 17 children and extravagant lifestyle. And I did things like this. Like I painted on. This is Otto von Habsburg. And it was a painting for like the National Library or something, and I had to do all kinds of crazy things like this. But what it did is it really like opened my spectrum of things, skills. There were a lot of skills, and I was also put into all kinds of crazy settings with really wild people, that I would have never met otherwise. And I didn't go through an academy system. I went through a very different upbringing, and this is also an image from the Apocalypse Church in Klagenfurt, Austria, and this is a piece that Fuchs worked on for about 30 years, and many different assistants worked with him on it, and I worked 5 different summers in this chapel. And you can see his style. I'll talk a little bit more to the style of painting. He brought back the Misch technique, which is an early Renaissance technique of doing an underpainting and using egg tempera as the light, to working on a darker tone, and then sculpting the imagery through using light rather than the shadow, and then glazing with light oil colors, and then you can keep building that. And this is a technique that hasn't been taught for quite a while, and mainly through him and people that have studied with him, even back in the 70s, Robert Venosa and different people have continued teaching this. And it's a really, really great, just skill set to have, to know the Misch technique and to know how to paint with light. Because as you see in this picture, that's me on the right, actually, about 12 years ago, probably, painting. You can't see me very well, but I painted all the drapery, separating the images up into heaven in the Apocalypse Church. And I painted it all with white first, just painting the light, and then we glaze over with color. And this is what I teach now, too, primarily is this approach to painting by using the light. And it's a really eye-opening kind of thing. And you don't have to be a great painter or illustrator or whatever already. It's something that you just put in your tool bag, and then you can keep... It's a good translator for visions, I feel like, especially for those of us that venture often and like to acknowledge the vision realm, right? And so to translate those visions, I feel like this medium is a very, very beautiful medium, just like working in computers is as well. So I'm going to show you a few more pieces of art here that I feel like is just great to open you to. This is Matti Klarwein on the left, and Matti Klarwein is also a very influential artist in kind of like the psychedelic art and visionary art, and he did the album covers for Santana, Abraxas, Miles Davis. And these are ways that some of the art came out into the open, and that's a really important thing to reference. Is the history of visionary art is very, it's a windy road, and it's very interesting because it has its roots go back to, say, Hieronymus Bosch, 500 years ago, painting these fantastic images and visions. And even further back, I mean, Alex Gray refers back to the cave paintings for the necessity of people to express themselves. And when you think about visionary art is something that I thought it was totally preposterous when I first heard the term. I was like, somebody's claiming to be a visionary artist? I mean, aren't we all visionary artists? And the thing is we are. I really believe we are, and I think that's a big thing to step up to. Actually, we're all artists. You don't even have to say visionary. But that's something that we develop. So for me to say now I feel like I'm a visionary artist, I actually do. Like, I actually feel more and more in tune with that word in the way that I put it through my filter, which is like, what does visionary mean to me? Well, I feel like the sacred is in there. There's also a sense of responsibility and a sense of there's a deep love involved too. But visionary can be interpreted in many different ways, and I think that's great for that. We have Robert Venosa on the right. He passed away last year. He was also a student of Fuchs, and he gave incredible contributions to the art world with his work and his crystalline kingdoms, and was an incredible teacher too with his wife Martina Hoffman. This is Martina Hoffman's work, and they're incredible guides and teachers within this community that I feel very blessed to be a part of. I would like to call it visionary culture more than anything, so visionary art, visionary culture, it's the same thing, visionary art and culture. And we have other, kind of leaders, guides in the movement, Alex and Allison Gray, and their building of Cosm in New York. Absolutely beautiful land. I got a chance to go work with them and assist them in a painting workshop there in August, and paint with them again in September in New York. And they are just wonderful symbols of, I feel like, carrying the torch, and really they're such incredible humble beings at the same time. And yeah, I really support their mission and to build Cosm, and I feel like more of an ambassador going around, kind of tuning into these different locations and knowing this need to be present and to kind of feel and be in that physical space with others, and then I take it with me in my little bag of tricks and go out and tell everybody else about it. And I feel kind of like a spider in that way, weaving a web, connecting a lot of dots. And I feel like they're different. Some of us are meant to hold down a node and to really cultivate the land and, raise the children. And right now, I feel like one of those that's out there connecting a lot of dots, and telling everybody, I've got this golden trumpet, I feel like, of good news. I'd rather tell the good news. And so here's some of Alex Gray, and then also Maura Holden. She's also an incredible painter. I get to teach with her every July in Italy, and we have this wonderful workshop there that's 3 weeks long, and we get to dive deep into paint and into the beautiful river there, and this wonderful community. It's an eco-village called Torre Superiore, and if you're ever interested in coming to join us, I definitely advise go check out the photos. And Katya was there a couple of years ago. Yeah. And have any of you ever heard of Paul Laffoley? You guys know who this artist is? He's an incredibly interesting character. He does all these, they're more like diagrams almost, his work, but they're all kind of telling the same story, I feel like, as some of the, the other visionary artists, really talking about the expansion and connection between science and spirituality and color, and how do all these things work. He's more laying it out in a diagram, whereas I feel like the other images and paintings they're just bypassing the kind of rational mind part. But his work is really incredible. I got goosebumps everywhere when I found it. I thought it was really exciting because I'd like to see there be more diversity acknowledged also within this term of visionary art, because it really is. I feel like there is no separation. I would like to see the inclusion rather exclusion, and I feel like this is what the culture is about ultimately. And so it really needs to be reflected in the work, and having more people come together from various, very different and broad backgrounds is incredibly important, and will reflect what we're talking about once that starts happening more and more. Then we have Pablo Amaringo. We saw some of his work last night in the film last night. He's a shaman from the Amazon, and he didn't have any formal training in painting. But he just painted what he saw, which is absolutely, I think, incredible. And there's a lot of painters that have come off of his school of teaching, and have taken it much further too, just in their own way. But it's an example of how this tribe is all over the planet. The thing is what's really interesting is about 10 years ago, when people started really tuning into the internet and posting their art online and looking for others, we started to realize this is a real international movement, and it's something so different than what has happened before, because it didn't stem from one little group in an academy somewhere or in some little town. So that's what used to happen. You'd meet up at the cafe and you'd talk, and then you start to show together, and this is how a lot of the great art groups of the past happened, because we also didn't have this ability to connect like we do today. And so this movement is also, you can really say, well, what's different about visionary art? Well, it's something that's sprouted up like a bunch of little mushrooms all over the place. And that's the truth, because there's a lot of people there, and there's a lot of self-taught artists. There's people that felt shunned from the academies, from the universities, haven't fit into the contemporary art world. I was definitely one of them. I tried to get into the art academy in Vienna. I didn't really try, but I did kind of. I went there to see what the chances were, and I got quite a little slap on the from one of the assistants there. It was very hoity-toity, and had his other little friends there, and they just kind of looked through my portfolio, which wasn't very exciting, I have to admit. At the time, it was a lot of still lives and portraits, and these were maybe not the most, they're like, we don't want to see this anymore. I'm like, what? I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to paint this for the rest of my life. I'm just showing you that I've learned how to do this. I mean, isn't this foundation good? I didn't think it was good. So I went on to keep doing my own thing. On the other hand, Adam Scott Miller, our dear friend, he went through school. He went through school and was a great pioneer. I was so happy to meet him and be like, wow, you did it. You bridged these worlds. Because you start to feel like an outsider, a serious outsider, when you didn't get to go through that institution in a way too. You kind of, I thrive on it. I teach it. I've spoken and taught at universities now, so I don't feel like there was something that I really missed out on. But I still think that there should be more links. There shouldn't be this separate thing. So I have another friend, Carrie Ann Bada. She's a professor at Florida State in Florida. And she's really trying to bridge these worlds too, and bring in all these unknown artists, into the curriculum, and share with the students, And this is how, we start to merge, and not just merge, but be aware of each other. I feel like any true artist is open and should be aware, and be interested. Some of them are total unique hermits, and that's fine too. Here we have Autumn Sky Morrison. She'll be at the Eclipse, for those of you who are coming to the Eclipse. She's from Canada. And she's also very much a self-taught artist and just an incredible human being. And I think that reflects in her work. Then we also have, it's not to be ignored. There's also a very important kind of like darker side, I guess, of things, of reality, and of the visionary world, and not that should be put out of, put aside. It's something that's also very much important. I don't feel called to spend a whole lot of time in those states, but those that do. One of my dear friends, Christopher Ulrich, his piece on the right, I think that's one of the most harmless pieces that he has. But he did this whole series of work called The Demon Eater. And I have to say, it is painted like Peter Paul Rubens, you know. I mean, it is exquisitely done. And it's a kind of work, though, too, that is just, oh, it's difficult. It's really difficult to look at. You don't really want to hang it in your house, but he's like this purging. You know, it's like, I feel like this purging that comes out of him for humanity. It's like he's letting these things come out and be free, and therefore and not giving them any power then. It's a really interesting process. We have a lot of great conversations about this. And Viktor Safonkin, he's from Russia, lives in Prague, also an incredible painter. And there is actually, I'd say there's even the darker side of visionary art, lowbrow. There's a whole bunch of different terms in there. Has been much more well known, and there's more galleries, successful galleries out there that showing this darker art, especially in Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles, and there's a much greater public that will come to these shows. It's changing though now. I feel this shift is happening, but it's kind of like there's a lot of incredible technical skill also in these artists that are doing these real dark stuff. They're real obsessive compulsive almost. I don't want to analyze it too much, but I feel like there's a degree of the dark art that should come out and is necessary, but we also really need to be like, okay, that's there. What do we want to see? What would you really like to see? Do you want to see these worlds? Do you want to build these worlds? I mean, I don't want to judge, but I really don't. I don't want to see some of those really nasty worlds come to be. But there's also Andrew Jones and Andrew Gonzalez, two very different techniques. Andrew Jones is a digital artist for the most part. Andrew Gonzalez, he works with airbrush, and then he uses erasers to kind of like bring out his highlights again. And he also teaches at this workshop in Italy that we do in July. And here we have Romeo Sharista, who kind of represents, I guess, the kind of Tanka painting and that whole, Nepalese, Tibetan, Indian. The Tanka painting is has an incredible background, being that they didn't own it individually, except for the head of the monastery, which is Romeo Sharista. He comes out and he's like, all this is mine. But we all know that a bunch of other monks and people have painted it. But that's kind of like the way that their culture, their prayers, they were done collectively. And this is something that I just had this wonderful conversation with him a couple weeks ago, where he was like, yeah, we gotta do more collaborations. We gotta get all these artists really collaborating together, like the Tanka paintings, and none of us needing to be in this like limelight. We need to be more as a group. We need to work more as a group. And I feel like the stories that I've heard about the Aborigines here too, there's very much like this group, like this gathering, this singing, this painting together, creating these paintings together. And I think this is an incredible aspect of what's happening within our cultures too, because I'm constantly looking for these reflections of where is there a repetition in a past culture or in a present culture that's happening, and just refining it, and the more we have to show and the more that we share between ourselves and then we can express to the rest of the world, the more then it opens up the doors and it opens up the space for a greater global awakening, put it bluntly. So this is I'm going to show some of my work from starting when actually this is one of my first, I'd say, kind of visionary pieces. And it was actually, I started drawing it on this little board, listening to a friend. For the first time I'd ever heard about DMT. And I was sitting there listening to a friend tell his experience. And it was like a good hour almost that he just went on in so much detail. And I just sat there and drew. And this was the first piece that came out, and it kind of like opened up a doorway. Even though I'd never experienced it, it started to open up this doorway into this this realm of connecting the technical skill that I had with the visions and these feelings that I felt were coming through through the stories that this guy was telling. And it was a big issue for me in many ways to break out of the painting what I saw habit. I don't know if it was a habit. It was something that I was a little bit, it was something to lean on. And when you throw away the crutches and you throw away the everything else and you're dependent only on that vision that is coming into you, you have to trust yourself a lot and actually really ask yourself, how do I really see that, and how do I translate that through? I believe, though, that the technical training of really studying life and studying the beauty in a plant or in a face, and the immaculate intricacy of perfection is something that you only gain a deeper love and respect for life itself. But then you gain the tools to paint really from your visions or from your imagination. So this painting is also interesting because this is one of the first paintings too, and I painted over this piece probably like 20 times, just working with it. And I took it once to Ernst Fuchs, and I showed him this piece, and it was in a state of absolute disarray. I mean, it was goopy, full of oil paint, and I couldn't really do anything to it. And he took it, and he was like, "Oh, this poor painting, it's so sick." And I was like, "I know, what am I going to do?" And he took some kind of like clay, and he patted it onto the painting, and it dulled it a little bit, but it just kind of like soaked up all the excess oil. And it was this really interesting process. He was very motherly with it. And but at the same time, I was kind of horrified, of what was going on. And he took it, and then he started painting on it, not necessarily to my, but not painting on it in a delicate way. I mean, he was very much going in there with one of his bigger brushes, kind of like, you got to kind of loosen it up like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was the last time I ever brought one of my paintings that I was working on in his vicinity. But out of this painting, though, I learned, I think, one of the most important lessons. And he told me, he said, this painting is, it's sick. You're not listening to the painting. That's why. You're struggling with it. You're not listening to it, to what it wants to say. You've already, birthed something here. And now you need to dance with it. And that was a huge revelation for me. And I think about this now all the time, because I feel like what I'm doing often isn't something that I really have a clear idea of what it needs to be. I would much rather, I know it's even grander if I open it up to a lot more players in the field. It was like, okay, guys, or, and the treat the painting like that. What do you want? What are we going to show here? What are we going to do? And that's super exciting. It's kind of like so exciting, you get a little nervous. But there's also paintings like this piece that I had a very clear vision of what it was going to be before I painted it. And this is called metanoia, and it's kind of like the division of the self, of the paranoia, which is held in either hand like red pill, blue pill. This was actually before the Matrix came out. And the two guns in the air, they're not held by anybody. They're toys. And there's nobody pulling, there's no hand there. They're just floating. So what are you afraid of? They're kind of like symbolizing, what are you ultimately afraid of? Is somebody going to put the bullet to your head or something? No, it's you. I mean, that's another self mirrored in there. So I had a very clear picture about this painting, and I painted it, But then there's others like this one. This is titled Dreams, and this was actually the first painting where the egg came to me, like consciously, where I realized the shape of the egg was something that was so profound and so was what I was looking for. I was looking for a shape that I could put anything into and feel completely safe. And this was this mission I went on in 2006 to Bali, and I went for 2 months with a roll of canvas and a little suitcase of paints and brushes. I went and painted for 2 months, and this was the first piece that came out, and it came out very automatically, just painting, and then it turned into kind of a self-portrait, and then and then this kind of dark sky. Out of this dark sky came this snake, and in its mouth was an egg, and I was like, all right, I'm going to paint eggs probably now for the rest of my life. But this is another one that came out of that same time. These fish kind of like symbolizing the yin and the yang, and they're the 2 fish that are tattooed on my feet. And this is also the third. There was a triptych: the visions, memories, and dreams, and this is visions. So I'm going to show you a few more just images of my work and talk a little bit about it. This is one of the first kind of egg paintings that I did. I actually really never liked calling them egg paintings or eggs. What are they? They're ovals, they're doorways, they're portals. I feel like they're portals. I feel like they're possibly like the shape of a wormhole or something that you can dive into. And the thing is maybe you don't dive into it. Maybe it's just like a reflection. You just stand in front of it, and it speaks to you on a cellular level. And I feel like the shape itself can kind of bypass a certain registration process and go straight to the cells. And if it has a really good intention, maybe it's some good medicine. It's another one. People ask me a lot, do you ever paint the eggs breaking open? And this is one of the earlier ones. This is kind of like, it's called potential, and showing the kind of like the workings, the inner workings, and more solidified kind of structures on the bottom, and those breaking out. This is called New Beginnings. This has got a long title, actually. It's called The Doorway to the Celestial Kingdom of the Eternal Ever-Changing Party of Now. And actually I have to give props always to my friend Roman Villagrana. And that, because it originally came from him, the Eternal Ever-Changing Party of Now. If you ever come to my house, that's the password to my Wi-Fi. This one's the Emerald Kingdom. There's another version of this called the Sacred Garden, where it has peyote and the ayahuasca vine and datura, all kinds of plants in there. This shows, I live in downtown Los Angeles, or I have for the past 3 or 4 years, on a rooftop with a garden and a whole interesting community of people that are, doing yoga and raw food, and we had an incredible gallery there called the Temple of Visions. And so this is kind of a vision for Los Angeles, for the urban setting of, the roofs could be green. We could have domes on them. We could have greenhouses. We could have all kinds of things, all the urban settings. There's a possibility for sure. We don't have to all leave the cities at some point. So I like painting it to think about it, because as I sit and paint about it, I dream about it. And there's something to dreaming, right? And I think the native culture here too has that in a very deeply embedded in their practice, is the dreams. So there's this painting that I did that you've probably all seen now, or most of you if you've been down to the river, the Ana Ceramic, which is the act of lifting the skirt. And I'll just show it to you right there. I'll tell you a little bit about it. This painting, I actually read about it in a book called The Story of V by Catherine Blackledge. And it's a story about the vagina, pretty much, and very interesting, based on research work of hers for probably a PhD, or who knows, something like that. And she wrote, there's an extensive chapter about the Ana Ceramic, which means the act of lifting the skirt in Greek. And there's stories that she brought together from all over the world of how women have done this in an act of defiance, or in a setting where they needed to stand up for something, either as a group or individually. And it's incredible. I had never heard about it, and I started talking about it to other people, and others had not heard of this either. And I was like, well, I've got to paint this. So it took me 6 years to actually finish it. I started with just like, wow, this is incredible, I should paint this, to then starting the painting, actually, because it was so inspiring and like powerful. And then to realize, well, I can't just be doing this to the viewers and like not have like a reason, because I'm not always going to feel like doing this, right? So I started really thinking about like what would be the biggest, like, how do I illustrate, what I really would lift my skirt to. And so that's what this story is around it. There's on the left is slavery, basically, and on the right is war. And in between my legs is the table of power. And this table of power is kind of, it's kind of hypothetical. I mean, do I really know that this is the way it all is? No, not at all. But this is, it's an illustration of a concept that there is this power structure that we've had going on here for a while that is really not, taking us in the right direction. So having like having the 13 chairs here, I remember hearing this story once. My mother was an activist, or still is very much an activist. I remember hearing the story about there being like the head table of the Illuminati is in this like deep room under the White House in America, and it has 13 chairs around it. And I always thought in my head, okay, symbolically that's the tip of that little pyramid there of power and control. So they're sitting around here. There's a map of the world on the table. And there's kind of like remnants of Western culture scattered around them. There's like a shopping cart and tires and oil barrels, and then there's this little teddy bear that's leaning up against the chair. And this is interesting. We were just in Moscow, actually, a couple weeks ago. I had a show there, and some of the guys there, they were like, that looks like Putin, Vladimir Putin sitting there. And then what was the name of the other politician? Medvedev, and it means bear. And there's like, this is like a perfect like representation here of like, there's Putin back in the seat, and Medvedev, or whatever his name is, bear, kind of just sitting down there feeling sorry for himself. No, maybe that wasn't quite the story.
Putin takes control, and then Medvedev takes control, and then Putin takes it back, just to keep it shuffling.
Yeah, exactly. So they're just passing it back and forth, but they were really excited about that aspect. And then, so then I thought, okay, this is all what I'm against, what I would lift my skirt to, and what I symbolically do, and I am now with this painting. But then what else is there? Like, there's got to be something more. What you got to have, like maybe not an answer, but a suggestion of where we could be going. And maybe that's not quite illustrated here, but there's definitely more support in this painting than just me lifting my skirt. There's like this act of laying an egg on the table of power, of being like, and being like, well, guys, it's like, if I'm going to actually do this, why not like, lay an egg too? Someday I gotta make a Halloween costume. I want to be the intergalactic hen. And so this egg is like, is this emanating this energy that is coming from the self-sustaining force. That's kind of symbolizing, I think, like this new consciousness, this awakening of consciousness. And then there's Metatron's cube at the heart chakra, which is kind of the voice of God, just really like in touch with source is what it symbolizes. And then the scarab, you can't really see it here, but there's a scarab around the neck, symbolizing rebirth. And then these two winged kind of like rainbow serpents coming up from behind me are like these guardians of our genome. And I only figured this out after I'd actually painted them, and then listened to this talk by John Lash about the Sophian myths, the creation myth that comes from the Gnostic texts. And it talks about how these eons in the center of our galaxy are just swimming around in this amazing creation pool of awesomeness, and they're creating these wonderful new experiments and sending them out into the arms of the universe and planting new worlds this way. And this is a beautiful creation story, and that our world was created out of Sophia and Christos coming together in this beautiful union and creating our genome. And she fell so in love with this experiment that she left her position in the center of the universe and took on the body of our Earth. And that's where the story of like our living planet and of Gaia comes from. And I think that was so beautiful when I heard this story, and then I felt like these two serpents that just kind of came out through the painting process were maybe some of these guys, protecting, supporting where we come from. And this is also a painting that I have to say is, I had the experience of going into this space of not being alone, but being alone, like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and having this experience of like this realm opening up and realizing that there was a whole group of non-physical entities hanging out with me, really interested in what I was doing. And I was just, it made me really nervous at first, but on the other hand, it felt great. I was like, oh wow, the veil just lifted. Okay, guys, what do you got? Let's work on this together. And it's something that hasn't happened that often, but I've definitely experienced those moments. And it's kind of like at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning often for me, at a time when there's like things are asleep, there's like this deep dream time. And they kind of helped me with this last little bit that I didn't know how I was going to solve this issue, was how is the energy coming out of this egg going to be connecting with these people sitting around the table. And I realized in this moment that it was actually, this interaction was completely peaceful. It was like meditation, that they were just sitting there, each individually sitting around this table and just communing with this energy. And it was like such a relief. I felt like it was going to be something really complicated, or have to figure something out. But it was this real like, it's all right. It's already happening. And the affirmation for me was that these people, too, like all of us, are having these individual awakenings. And there's not a lot that we can do about it otherwise, except to keep doing what we're doing best and having a good time, and being more and more aware of our surroundings and our world and our lives. But that it is this individual awakening that's going to actually tip and change the course of our direction on this planet. So I've taken this painting all over the world, and one of those places that we took it was Occupy LA on one of the last days before it got raided. And there was about 11 of us that took the original painting, because it's big, the painting's like this size, and we took it and marched it down Broadway. And took it to Occupy LA, and there was all the news, trucks are there and the helicopters everywhere, and it was a really intense situation, and we did this circle of urinae, is what we called it, around City Hall, of kind of like this protection thing. And it was really cool. We got, a lot of great conversations. A lot of the news teams kind of shied away whenever we'd get close. But that was really fun, and I feel like this painting for me was a real breaking point in, it closed a certain 6-year period for me, and also opened up something new that I'd been waiting for and building towards, I feel like, my whole life. And it's yet another beginning, but it's really exciting, and I'm about to get to that. So I've got a few more paintings here to show you. This one's Sharing Rays. Birth of Venus. That's oil on canvas. The Shaman. Got a print of this over at the little gallery. This is the Gaian Ambassador. And some of these paintings they start when I live painting, and I'll start with this face and this thing. It'll come, and I don't know who they are, but I feel like they have something to share. And it's really fun to interact with these paintings like this, to be like, it looks like it's a reflection in a way, but on the other hand, it's a guide or a prophet from another land or time. I don't know. It's the Pandoran ambassador. And this is also, it was one of my favorite radio shows, Coast to Coast AM. I listen to a lot. I've had some artwork up there before, which was really exciting. Let's see, here's a few. This is my studio in Los Angeles, having different gatherings there. That's Bear Cloud talking about his theories and ideas. This is our rooftop gardens, downtown Los Angeles. Just going to click through. This is the Temple of Visions. This is a beautiful gallery that we had there for a couple years. Beautiful mural by friend Savi. These great guardians. It was such a beacon and a place of hope, and I just wanted to share some of this with you, because there is that's happening all over the world. There's these pockets of communities growing, not just in the festival setting, but also in physical setting. This is me live painting out on the streets in downtown LA, and more live painting. Collaboration pieces is something that I feel really strongly about, and how important that is to have this collaboration. This is at a MAPS conference. See Rick Doblin there. Did big paintings. And then Burning Man, I have to mention Burning Man here, just because of its importance, and I feel like our greater global community, and getting a chance to go there, it's like the best office meeting in the world for me. You get to meet up with so many incredible people. I mean, it's definitely not an office. I mean, it's a very abstract term. But there's the gallery at Boom, and also Burning Man. Going to Alchemize is also a gathering that was happened a couple years in Hawaii, which was a really wonderful gathering of the tribes. This is our little Congress meeting that we had afterwards at Jim Shannon's property, who's an incredible visionary. And if you've ever seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats, or have ever heard of the New Earth Army, he's the guy that Jeff Bridges played, and he's a real deal. And his whole vision of the New Earth and is incredibly inspiring. And Simon, I don't know, painting over here, and I've been talking a lot about Jim's vision, and Simon's got this whole vision with the boats, and me and Chris, we've been dreaming a lot about trains for the past year, and it's a really exciting time. I want to get through these slides real quick so I can talk about it. This is some of my workshops. This is painting with Alex and Allison Gray in there. This is just a couple months ago in Cosm, painting together in the Mushroom Cafe. Hope you all get to make it there someday. Cosm. Here we go with Swoon. She's an incredible Swoon and Carrie Ann. Bridge building here between different circles. Swoon's a very well-known street artist. And Carrie Ann, she's comes more from the lowbrow, darker arts, but is now really bridging into the visionary worlds. And Swoon has this great idea, too, of wanting to take, she's doing these amazing social projects, and I take the win-win-win solution, not just win-win, but win-win-win solutions, and I feel like that's what permaculture is pretty much about in a lot of ways, and that's the root of the vision that I feel like I feel like I'm nurturing the most out of anything, and that I do, it kind of weaves into everything that I do, and it's this pathway, it's this journey, it's a symbolic journey in many ways of regeneration, and we're doing it every day, with consciously going about our lives. But I see this potential and this journey coming, and it being this migration of the tribes of coming together and going as on an empowering journey around the world. And we've been calling it the Earth Voyage, and it's it's something that's still such in a state of storytelling. And it's frustrating sometimes because you really feel like, oh my God, we got to have this business plan and all this kind of stuff ready to really get everybody excited and get people on board in a real tactile way. But it's still this painting regeneration is actually kind of about an aspect of this vision, which would be taking kind of like this festival culture in a sense and incorporating a much grander picture of making like a world fair almost out of it, of taking all the different aspects of science and technology and agriculture and arts and education and making this whole experience that everybody can come to and they don't have to come and camp out in the desert, like Burning Man. They don't have to go to such great extremes. It can be something that children and grandparents and people can participate in, but at the same time it is in really influencing and supporting communities, local communities, into flowering and having a greater network of abundance that they're connected to. And this is as these different nodes and these different properties and people building these wonderful projects all over the world, as they grow, a network system that connects all of them is something that I see as being incredibly vital and important. And through this connecting of this network connecting is actually what will protect them, the individual ones as well. And it's not necessarily that there needs to be a protection, but it needs to be seen as a real global movement. That this isn't something that just a few people over here and a few people over there are doing. This is for the earth. This is a benefit for the earth. So I see this journey as like this journey for the earth. Like, I mean, you could get really hippie about it and be like, I mean, it's the rainbow tribes, coming together to go around the world and spread, all this fairy dust. And I kind of feel like, in a way, wouldn't that just be beautiful? Like, wouldn't it just be beautiful? Just like distract them, and by not criticizing anymore. The whole Occupy thing is very important to a degree. All the resistance efforts and all the, I mean, for what's happening, say, in Palestine and so many places in Africa, all over the world, where there's incredible injustices happening on the planet, and there needs to be people fighting and on a front basis, really to stop these things. But at the same time, I feel like what are the rest of us going to all these incredible festivals and doing this and doing that? And I mean, why don't we focus our efforts? I mean, we've had this training ground for so long for those of us that have been a part of building these gatherings. Now it's time. Why don't we just take it even a level above that and really reach out in a more collective effort? And I feel like this is happening, that people are talking about this. And I love hearing myself repeated through somebody else's words where they've never even heard my words. And I'm just like, yes! Like, that's to me affirmation of like that I'm on the right path too, and that this isn't like one person's vision. This is tons of people's visions that is like all over the world. So it's like, how do we do this? That's like the part that I'm getting really antsy about too. It's like, let's start seeing some more results and some, what is that operating system going to be? What's the next thing after Facebook? What is this thing that we're going to feel more safe to communicate with each other? And that pathway that is really exciting. So what programs, we have all the genius in, around us. It's like, so what are we going to do? And these kinds of how we're going to get there is a real question for structure and community, and how do we make decisions together? How do we appoint leaders? How do we, and who's going to step up to the plate for this and this? I feel like the stepping up to the plate part has a lot to do with, well, what do you really want to do? And what is your contribution? And I feel like that's a place to start, And then as we keep weaving on this path, I feel like I feel like there's a lot of beauty ahead of us. And I feel like the more that I get to be around so many incredible people and see and get to experience awesome things, the more I believe in it too. And so that's one of the reasons for taking all of this and going on the road and taking the circus on the road in a really, really incredible way of like how it can communicate with the entire planet, you know, through the internet, through life, you know, through life and live broadcasting. And yeah, I kind of would love to put it out there to you all, you know, like to take this vision and take like the visions that you gather here and keep talking about it, you know, and dream about it, like in whatever you do, you know, say you're gardening or you're drawing or you're making music or washing the dishes, you know, spend more time dreaming about what you really want to see. And I feel like, and less time worrying about things. and maybe, you know, maybe we'll get there. I think, you know, I'm constantly surprised of how incredible the world and my experience actually ends up being. And I think that state of surprise is something that I desire to have the rest of my life. Like, let's constantly be surprised with the beauty and the awesomeness of what actually tomorrow may bring. Sometimes it's a little hard, but the thing is, it's usually better than you could possibly imagine. And I know I only got like a few minutes left, but is there anybody have like a question or anything? Dan?
Yeah, I'm interested in symmetry.
Symmetry.
Yeah, and I noticed other than the eggs, which are like a very powerful spheroid symbol, that the symmetry is quite, quite prevalent in a lot of your work, and it's a very interesting idea, because I remember as a kid, really, like, everything for me had to be symmetrical, and it was only later that I really appreciated, you know, like some of the Japanese aesthetic where symmetry was, you know, where like off-center seemed to be so harmonic as well. And so I just wanted to hear a bit about what you thought about your symmetry.
Yeah, I'm also very inspired by symmetry, obviously. There's a lot of my work that is based on that, and I feel like it's this centering force and this, like, the toroidal kind of like movement that is in every cell and that is like our planet and everything, right? And this toroidal force is like this balancing, and it's like this looking into a mirror almost of oneself and finding like balance, because none of my paintings, for an example, are actually really symmetrical. It's an organic symmetry because they're hand done. Like, I don't use something to trace, you know, one side to the other. And so as I paint them, I'm constantly balancing out one side to the other side. And it's this kind of almost mesmerizing and maybe healing thing. And that's kind of how it feels to me. Like, it's something that feels good. And so that's what I actually allowed to guide me the most, is the feeling good part. Like, when I started doing that more and more rather than things that would throw me off. But I throw myself off to challenge myself to feel good in anything. But I think the symmetry specifically is something that is very ultimate, kind of. It's like this ultimate space of reflection. And I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like the symmetry is like growing. Like, I see it in so many people's work. And it's like a mandala, you know? It's like it's sacred geometry. It's like the most basic thing. It's like taking the center line and then the horizontal. But yeah. Yes. Here comes Waz running.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Amanda. It's pretty amazing. My passion and dreaming is definitely along the lines of regeneration and restoration and nurturing this beautiful planet back to the blue-green jewel that she is. And over the years I've been to a lot of festivals and a lot of rainbow gatherings, and it's always been difficult for me to walk away from these opportunities to leave something beautiful behind, to actually make the most of people coming together, and, you know, even down to the shit that everyone leaves behind, instead of leaving it in a big pit, you know, composting it and then actually creating a garden there. And the idea of a journey that goes around the world, regenerating the earth, is really exciting to me.
Yay! Yeah, that's exactly. I feel like this is something that is like this little. For me, when I saw the egg, I kind of got this whole epiphany. And for me, when the train came along, it was this next epiphany. And the train's kind of like a snake almost, you know, that like sheds its skin too, and it's constantly in the symbol of transformation. But this leaving beauty in its wake, you know. There's leave no trace with a smile on your face. That's a Burning Man motto. But there's I would like to see let's leave in our trace, like just beauty and awesome, like gardens and schools and, you know, updated water filtration systems. I always use that example, and I'd really like to see that happen. I mean, out here we get to drink right from the river. I mean, how amazing is that? I don't know when the last time was that I did that, and you know, to bring that awareness. And to use, you know, we could use all kinds of, also bring the structures, how do you, cob building, you know, all kinds of, there's this Leader of Light project that this man, Elak Diaz, created, where making light inside of structures through using plastic bottles. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this TED Talk, and we got to meet him in the Philippines when we were there last week. It was really incredible. And, these kinds of things, like he's already wanting to take this on the road, you know, and already is to a degree. And then we have his other friend in the States, the Sustainable Living Roadshow, and there's a bunch of different groups out there now that are all ready for this next step. So is Burning Man. Like Burning Man's actually ready for the next step. I mean, they've been putting most of their efforts into the regionals and in terms of strategy and future thinking. But what about, you know, it's time. Burning Man's been around for 25 years, you know. What about actually making some real permanent contributions? And yeah, so thank you very much for saying that, because I helped nudge a little bit more out. But it's something that I really feel is it just makes sense for our time, you know. And coming into 2013 now, you know, we're in this, like, once we come out of 2012, which is this kind of, for me, it's this real conjuring up of a lot of stuff, you know. It's all this kind of excitement. You know, and then it's like, in many ways, I feel like 2013 is going into a lot more like, what are we really doing? You know, and now we got to really take responsibility for things. And we can do it. There's absolutely nothing holding us back. You know, and this has all been our training grounds. And we gather here, and we get to connect. We create relationships, you know, and bonds, trust. Like, all these things are going to be incredibly important when we take all these things on the road. And I don't see just one journey, I see many, you know, it's many, this like a pattern, a fractal pattern, you know. And as we, though, have a place where we can bring it together, you know, it will be very important, because we need to be able to show what we're doing. Because the more that we can show what we're doing, the more support we will have from a much broader public. And I think what we're doing is absolutely incredible and beautiful. The more testimonies we have of that, it's great.
And thank you so much for your talk. It was a really inspiring, beautiful talk. And yeah, actually, listening to your talk from Burning Man actually made me decide to come to this conference. I was really not sure about whether to leave Melbourne and come up north. And yeah, listen to your talk, and you actually put me over the line, and yeah, decided to come up north for the festival and conference. But I just wanted to ask what you do to get into the zone when you're painting, or beforehand. Like, do you meditate, or do you get into the heart space, or is there any particular rituals that you have before before you start painting?
Yeah, I'm very much. Thank you for that question, because that is something that I think I needed to be asked. It wasn't going to come up right, but I don't actually have a ritual, and I think that's just something that is. I like to put myself into the position of it needing to burst out, but on the other hand, I also feel that whenever I actually sit down with a paintbrush in my hand, something's going to happen. And so the most profound moments that I've experienced in painting, where it's absolutely been in the flow, has been when I am at a perfect, like everything is kind of perfect around me. You know, where there's the lighting's perfect, something else, I'm listening to something that's happening. This is, you know, and it's something that I can't really calculate and I can't really design. But there are subtle things that over time that I have, you know, become more accustomed to, that I really like to have. Sometimes also, you know, having a little smoke, or, you know, something to get me outside if I've been too wrapped up in other things, to get me into space of relaxation, some yoga, maybe just like taking a deep breath, and maybe a little bit of meditation. But I don't have anything that's really specific. I also really have enjoyed painting live in the past few years. I'm really picky about that, though. Like I get kind of weird about it, and like a little bit like a princess, and want it all to be quite perfect, because if it is perfect, then something really amazing will happen right there. But if it's not, if there's a struggle, that struggle can happen on the canvas, because I don't really plan them. I don't plan my paintings so much. So it's kind of like, well, what's going to happen? And you want it to be something exciting, especially if you're going to paint live and other people are going to watch you. But if other people are watching you, they give you energy too. And that's really beautiful. Like if you're open to that collaboration, you can, it's such an incredible fertile space. And yeah, opening yourself to every little brush stroke, and where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I feel like I just feel the colors. It's like, okay, this color, I want to go here, I want to go there, and then I see what happens. Yeah, I don't want to overrun the schedule here.
No, you're right. Keep going. We're waiting on Dennis to come down.
We
are?
Keep
him up, yeah. So we've got another question over here.
Amanda, would you like to ask you, what do you think about those digital artists that nowadays they grab a little corner of your art and then another corner of another art, put on top of each other, and after 5 minutes they have a piece that looks just as good as yours, and that you took 1 year to draw yours, and they done in 5 minutes on a Photoshop?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. Like to watch my buddy Andrew Jones just bust it out, you know, and then it's all moving, and within 5 minutes and everything, you're just like, But I still am very, like, I don't know, there's like something about the actual act of painting, the physical act of like the brush in your hand, you know, that extension of your body with the paint. And it's a ancient and magical ritual, actually. I think painting is more than anything a ritual. And it's an imprint of your soul, and it's something that, like, every time you put a stroke down, it's there. You can't, like, press delete on the layer, you know? I mean, you can try to paint over it and do that, but it's like this major commitment. And to me, out of all the years of being around my digital friends and stuff, and watching actually Simon play with ZBrush, I don't know if you guys know that program, I was just like, huh. I actually would really like to play with those tools, and I'm sure I will. But I still feel this, like, deep bond with the act of like, this real traditional act of painting. And I feel like sometimes I feel a little intimidated by the digital artists, I have to say, because of what they can bring forth and how many layers and dimensions they can make. I mean, you can never paint this stuff, some of this stuff. So it's just it's something different. I see it as something different, and I see it all as being very valid. I feel like the energy that I put into my work and into my paintings is, just as present and there. And I feel like, I wouldn't be here if other people didn't think it was too in this setting, talking about it and exhibiting it. And there is something to be said for, doing it by hand, making something by hand, whittling a stick, making a pot, doing something. There's a connection to ourselves and to our own genius, and we have all these incredible programs to do all these things with, but when you're doing it yourself, it's just you and spirit and paint. And that's pretty magical. And I think as a personal experience, is you have a lot of things that you have to overcome too. You don't want, I go to great lengths in my layers, and you have a layer that you can blend here and blend there in a digital program. If I decide, that layer back there that I did at one point and did this other thing on top, I need to go back there and change that color. I go back there and do it actually, and then I paint, and it takes me 8 hours maybe. But it's kind of that dedication and that meditation within that I'm learning stuff the entire time while I'm doing it. And I know that the end result's going to be even better because I know that I have to go do that. So it's kind of like sometimes not the easiest route. It'd be easier to just click it away, but yeah. I enjoy the subtle struggle and dedication that is involved in painting.
Alrighty, we've got time for one more. Let's see your hands. Antonio.
Thanks, Amanda. I just wanted you. Well, I guess I had the experience of learning the Mish technique last year, and I had the feeling that it's this really special. There's almost like a transmission of some kind of knowledge within the technique, because it sort of puts you in this meditative state. And I don't know, I just wondered if you had any comments on that, and the kind of seeding of the visionary artists that are sort of popping up like flowers all around the world.
Well, I feel like the Mish technique, how that plays with the visionary art, how that fits so well together, is because you're painting with light primarily, where you're focusing on this underpainting, and as that develops. For those of you that don't know what an underpainting is it's basically working on a toned canvas, a somewhat darker canvas, not white, and then sculpting your shapes and your images using white. And so you're thinning down the white at times to create gray tones. And this creates kind of a skeleton for your painting. And this, when you glaze lightly with color, it glows. And this goes back and forth in getting darker at times and then bringing back in the light and then glazing it again with color, bringing back in the light. And this is something by constantly building the light, you build layers. And I feel like it's a kind of a lens that you put on. It's a lens, and for me, I put on like a sunglasses, like little claps. I feel like I put on my little claps for just seeing the light and painting light. And then I put on my color one. And then I put on my shadows, and I kind of bounce between those three. And the thing is there's a certain kind of like opening that you can do in each one of those, because you don't have to really think about the others. And through those kind of real basic steps, I feel like there's a lot of room for magic to happen, and for different, while keeping the entire composition and piece in mind. And you not having to think about all of it at once is kind of a relief. It was for me in the beginning, and I kind of teach it like that too, or share that technique in that way. It's kind of a relief to know you don't have to think about all these things at once. Just focus on this, and then this, and then this. And using, taking, of course, your entire composition in mind, keeping that in mind the whole time. But, painting is a deep meditation, and there is so much space, once you let go and you listen to your piece, there's so much that can happen. And the Mish technique is a beautiful tool, and anybody that wants more information and wants to learn, you're welcome to get in touch with me, and I'll point you in directions. There's many people teaching it now. We're hoping to start an academy in Vienna at some point. That's something that's very, not quite announced yet, so I'll just kind of mention it. But yeah, there's a lot of movement there, and thank you everybody for listening and for being here. It's gotten dark now. It's so dark that our lights will have to shine bright. And are we still waiting for Dennis? Is Dennis here?
Dennis is here. We're just sorting out some tech stuff. Anybody else got another question? These are really cool answers.
More questions? Of course. I'll just
talk. It's really cool.
I'll just chit chat the whole time. I do good. I do much better in question and the answer. Maybe not much better, but I enjoy it.
I see some hands, or just one. Okay.
Hey, I'm just curious. Do you always complete the painting that you begin? Or I'm just in awe of the dedication and the commitment that goes into creating one of your pieces, and I'm wondering if there's ever a piece that you look at and you're just kind of put it away and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that, or if you always feel like when something comes through, it's part of your purpose to bring forth what it is that wants to come out.
There's so many unfinished paintings that I have. And a lot of them, especially when I started live painting, because live setting is so great for birthing something, for something new coming through. And then to really take it to the level that I love to go with a piece, really need some serious studio time. And so there's series of paintings that have never been finished that I have. And some of them you end up leaving and being, that was a record of this time and space. And then others, I'll morph them into integrating into a new story and adding it to another. And I do this often when I have an exhibition coming up, and I'll kind of pick and choose from really newer work and older work, and then work it into a story, and especially ones that I really transform. I like to document the process too. But it's the same thing, listening to them. They're all these little children, kind of. And you're like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I really feel bad for the ones that just don't get any attention for a while and never get to go out into the world. That's just awful. But then I keep making new paintings, and, maybe someday they'll all come together and I'll have a nice, big, beautiful studio where I can... But the thing is, it's all relative. You can spend so much time on one little piece doing this, and then you can work on this over here. It's hard to narrow it down. What am I actually going to focus on? Which I think is a big metaphor for life in general. Yeah, so I really want to do a series of paintings that are eggs that are this big, like doorways. And in a lot of ways, I realize that they're in reference to Alex Gray's Sacred Mirrors paintings, with the humans like this. And I didn't think of that at first and be like, oh, should make something, to that would in some way mirror Alex Gray's work. But I feel like these doorways and these pieces, a lot of the work that I have been doing I see them as sketches until they actually become a finished product. And a finished painting, Picasso said, a painting's only finished when it's sold. And I did actually make a big mistake. Maybe it's not a mistake, with a painting of mine that I did 10 years ago. It's this big, beautiful nude, very classical nude on a sofa. And I let my mentor, Ernst Fuchs, who's now 82, paint on it. Because I hadn't sold it yet. I figured, why not let it just keep living? And he kind of painted over all the good parts. And now I'm just like, all right, learned a lesson there. But I gave it up. I gave it up to the universe. I was kind of like, let's see what happens. Because I probably wouldn't have gotten to collaborate with him in many other ways. But, yeah.
One more over here.
Thanks for the inspiration, Amanda. Just, I've heard a few visionary artists talking about how the movement of visionary art itself is alienated from or by the mainstream art establishment, and I'm wondering, why is that? And my experience in the music industry is that the industry of producing like commercial pop music or high music is often kind of bound up with capitalist interests, basically. And I'm wondering, what do you have any perspective on why it is that visionary art is marginalized?
Oh yes, that's actually a really important point. And visionary art is something that has deep lineage, along with, I'd say, a lot of underground things that have been forced underground because of political things, because of different things that have changed in societies, and who is in power when. I mean, there's a really great presentation that my friend Michael Devine gives, talking about the history of visionary art and how it was kind of like went underground around the time World War II. You know, when the rise of modernism in art, kind of, and the Allies came, you know, kind of brought this abstract expressionism, or America did, and how anything that had any mention of the occult or sacred art or anything that was like spiritual in a sense was kind of banned in a sense from the academies. I mean, there's this great transition, or anything that was like real symbolic or too detailed or realistic, especially realism at that time period. That was something that was really pushed out. And it was a necessary thing, I think, that our world had to go through in a lot of ways, is in the Western world, too, of being like, well, what is art? And redefining the whole thing, you know, the whole real conceptual. And, you know, we don't need, nothing needs to be painted in such a realistic way anymore, is an important birthing. But it's visionary art now has come from a different side. You know, it's not something that's come out of the institutions, just as the music hasn't either. You know, this is something that actually has its roots more in tribal settings, I think. And that's why it's all over the world, too, because these are people that are tuning back in with their ancestors and original people connected to the earth, people connected to spirit. And this is also entheogens. You know, that's was something that was also, when that was taken out of the conversation and that was taken out of art, taken out of like a real conversation within, I guess, the artist circles, you know, it became something that wasn't appreciated or allowed. You know, I mean, this whole like the sacred, psychedelics, and the occult and realism, all of these things are kind of something that I see in visionary art. And those are all things that were kind of pushed out. And so there's this resurgence that's happening now. There's a new wave. And this new wave is something that's happening as a result of entheogens, of, you know, there being like these different revolutions in consciousness. And it's all kind of merging and coalescing at this time. And through the internet, you know, people are able to find each other, and now articles are being written about it. You know, movies are being made, and the more and more that becomes mainstream, the more then it becomes also a trend, and things are forced to follow. I mean, at the institutions, still the academies, there's still quite a struggle in there being you know, this work being acknowledged. You know, there aren't really any courses on it or anything, you know, but it takes time. It takes people doing a couple PhDs on it. I mean, have you heard of this conference that happened at UPenn in Philadelphia called Psychedemia? And this just happened like a month ago. And this was incredible. This was at the first university in America, a conference on psychedelics. Academics meet psychedelics. And it was sponsored by the university, partly. But still, this is the first time this has ever happened. And so the more that this, Charles was there, I was there, Chris was there, you know, and the more that we are representing in all these different circles in these places and speaking out and showing our work, you know, this is where music and art is very important, because it has, it's something that you can see and you can hear. You know, they're actual things. And representing also the states of mind and consciousness and experience that we're having. And yeah, I feel like art and music is a great vehicle, and always has been, for change. And so there a lot of the pioneers are there. And once you ask yourself, am I doing something for money? Am I doing something to fit into a gallery? Am I doing something to, or am I really following my heart? And that's sometimes not the easiest road. But in general, I feel like it's the better way, for sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Gentlemen, Miss Amanda Sage, thank you very much. Now coming